Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that afterwards. I'll do that afterwards. The link's not as important as the live. Well, good evening, Throttle Up Biker Bible Study. How we doing tonight? Hey, listen, first off, I want to apologize for last week and the week before. It's been a couple of weeks since we met, right? And we just a lot of excitement around here. And anyway, good to be back. Glad the snow melted today, so we were able to get around pretty well. But it's dropped 20 degrees in the last few minutes, so pardon me as I try to adjust this to get the the right sound out of it. Anyway, how are we doing tonight, though? Good to see you back. I know you were out in Middle Tennessee with your grands. Yeah. That happens. That happens. We don't know why that happens, but it happens. So you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's focused up high. It'll get the top of your hat. That's about it. Yep, absolutely. Looked like some snowball coming at my face. Thanks a lot. Anyway. So remember, we are in the book of Leviticus, right? And this is a lot of words in here directed at the priests. Who are the priests? Right. The sons of Aaron, descendants of Levi. Right. That's correct. So I got to thinking about what we're going to cover tonight. Chapter 10 is where we're going to start. However, one of the first things it talks about is that two of Aaron's sons die. And I got to thinking, why? What is so specific about what they did? And we'll get to it in a minute, but I want to go back to Exodus chapter 30 for just a second, right? Remember Exodus, the book of Shemot? Exodus 30, what was my verse? 30 and 9. Just one verse, right? So this is where Moses is given the instructions on how to build the altar of incense, right? What makes the fragrance pleasing to the Lord, right? But look specifically at verse 9, right? I can't even see all of a sudden. So it says in verse 9, it says, "You shall not offer unauthorized incense on it, or a burnt offering or a grain offering, and you shall not pour a drink offering on it." This is talking about the altar of incense, right? And I thought it was kind of interesting when it does that, because there you go. So what's that? One cold Bible because it was out in the car? Yeah, absolutely. So again, there were very specific instructions that were given. They have to be followed exactly. Now I'm going to ask you guys a bunch of questions tonight to see if you can follow along and follow these simple instructions. Yeah, the answer unfortunately is no, right? We know that already. So Leviticus. Yep. Yeah, all these things you told us to do, and we can't do them. Yeah. That's Keith. In case you couldn't hear. Yeah. So Leviticus chapter 10. Here's how it's going to start. It says, "Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer." What is a censer? Anyone know offhand? Okay. So I need you to picture, if you will, a priest walking with that. I almost called it a chamber pot. And that would not be the appropriate thing. the little, that with smoke coming out of it. Okay? That is a censer. Okay? So they took their censer and put fire in it and laid incense on it, and offered unauthorized, or some versions say strange, fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. All right. So let me just read that again to make sure everybody's with us, right? So now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took the censer, the thing that has the incense in it, put fire in it, and laid incense on it and offered unauthorized or strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. I cannot help but think of this. They put something on there that was either not from the fire of the altar of offerings, or they put something on it other than the fragrant incense that they were supposed to. Now, knowing where we're located and what grows in the fields here, that could have been what it was. I'm just saying, right? It could be something that they shouldn't have put on that fire. But that's really not it. It's because it came from a fire not from the altar. Okay, that's why it's called the strange fire. That means they went out to one of the other locations, picked up a coal, threw it in the censer, put incense on top of it, and look what we did, instead of doing the process. The whole thing is about the process. So look what it says now, verse 2. Verse 2 says, and fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Okay, this is a very offensive thing to God. They did not follow the directions, so they got consumed. It doesn't say they go to hell. We don't know. But here's the picture I want you to think. Do you ever watch Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant, right? It's called what? Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? So when they open it up, and they get the angels flying around, and all of a sudden they turn into demons, and it melts that guy's face. That's the picture in my mind every time I read this, because fire comes out and gets them, just like that. Whoo! The fire itself, the coal, was not from the appropriate altar. They brought it in from a campfire in the desert somewhere. No, they're not silly, because somebody else might not understand either. So come on. As a matter of fact, if we went back to Exodus 30, it has to be continual. So twice a day they have to stoke the fire and build it up again. So remember, the table's there, right? So you have the tabernacle, which is the tent at the far end of the compound, right? And outside of the compound, you have the altar where they offer the sacrifices for the people. And then inside the first room, called the holy place, or the place where the priests do all of their work, right? There's altars for the incense right in front of the door or the opening to the Holy of Holies, where only one man goes one time a year, right? And then there's the table of the showbread, and there's the candelabra, what they call the menorah, right? And then there's an altar there that the priests have to do very specific rituals to atone for the sins of the people of Israel. That's where that coal is supposed to come from, to go into the censer and the incense on it before they go in. Yes, sir? Right. That's a good point, Ian. It's almost like being a false idol, because that's supposed to be holy unto the Lord, right? Everything in that room, the holy place, which is inside the front of the tabernacle, later on will be the front of the temple, has to be perfect, has to be holy, has to be set aside, right? Now, in addition, we're going to go into this here in just a second, that is where the priests eat. And they eat the parts of the offerings that God tells them to. Nothing more, nothing less. If they don't eat it all, it has to be burned up and consumed, and then the rest of the slaughtered animal has to be taken outside of the camp, outside of the gates, to be burned up in a fire far away. Okay? Now, all that's going to come up in a second. So that's a good question. Good question. We don't know where it came from, but it didn't come from where it was supposed to, so it wasn't holy. Okay? So let's go on. So that was verse 2. Verse 3. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord has said. Among those who are near me, I will be sanctified, and before all the people I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. Aaron just lost 2 of his 4 sons. So half his kids are gone, right? Verse 4, and Moses called Mishael and Elsaphon, I probably said that wrong, sorry, which are the sons of Uzziel, which is the uncle of Aaron. Wouldn't that make that Moses' uncle as well? Since Aaron is Moses' brother. Anyway, huh? Oh, uncle-in-law maybe. Uncle-in-law. Anyway, so, and said to them, come near, carry your brothers away from the front of the sanctuary and out of the camp. They're no longer holy. They're no longer whole either, right? They got burned up. But they're no longer holy. Get them out of the temple or the tabernacle, right? Verse 5. So they came near and carried them out in their coats. Remember, they have special clothing. Now, once again, these are things I have to assume because of the way it reads. In their coats means the coats didn't get burned up by the fire, but the men did, right? But now those coats, many colors, can no longer be used because they are unclean. Now, that's a word you're going to hear a lot tonight, unclean, right? Out of the camp, as Moses said. And Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons, do not let the hair of your heads hang loose, and do not tear your clothes, lest you die. It was a normal thing when your family member died of an unfortunate circumstance like this, that you rent your clothes. Don't sell them, but you tear them. It's called renting your garments. That shows it's their way of showing remorse and sorrow. As a matter of fact, as you go on through the Bible, they hire people to do that later on. When we saw early in Matthew where Jesus was going in where, I don't remember if it was Lazarus or if it was the little girl, had died, they had hired people to stand outside and cry. Remember? That's a normal thing for Hebrew people to do. So here it says, do not rent your clothes or tear your clothes, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the congregation. That would be the whole of Israel, 2.5, 3 million people. But let your brothers, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning that the Lord has kindled. Okay, remember, the tabernacle is in the center of 2.5 million people. And 2 people just died. They got to get them out of there, right? But they can't react to the death. Otherwise, 2.5 to 3 million people would not have their sins atoned for. And everybody would be in trouble. Can you handle that pressure? It's hard enough for us to, I hate to say it like this, but if our little doggy dies, it's hard enough for us just to get it out of the house, right? Right. Yeah. That's the exact emotion that these people would have had, right? So it says, and do not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting, that's the tabernacle, right? Lest you die, for the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moses. So they cannot even leave the building they're in. They can't go home because of what has happened. Yep, under tent arrest. All right, so here we go. So, and the Lord spoke to Aaron. Now, they don't read that very often. The Lord usually speaks to Moses. But here's the Lord spoke to Aaron, saying, drink no wine or strong drink, you or your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, lest you die. And a lot of people take that to mean the boys were drunk when they took the censers in. No, it's not what it says. The censer had strange fire or unconventional fire in it, right? So, but they are told now they can't drink any strong drink before they go into the sanctuary ever again. It says, matter of fact, it says, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. You are to distinguish between the holy and the common. between the priests and us folks. Everybody understand that? Between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. Yours says unholy? Yeah, there's going to be several words, but they all come back to the same thing. Not presentable to the Lord is what that means, what that word means. So, that's us. Well, it depends. He's distinguishing between priests and regular people, and then those people that are clean and those that are unclean. You can be clean, and you'll see in a minute when you're not clean. Because, like I say, chapter 11 is going to start in on us on how to be clean versus unclean. Well, that's between the first one, right? It says between the holy and the common. If this were that setting, that would be correct. However, because of where we fall, because we're Gentiles, we can never be holy. All we can be is, atoned for. We can be, that's the propitiation gave us starts with an R, and it's getting back in tune with God. I can't think of the word. Yes, redeemed. Good, thank you. See, that's why I depend on my people to help me with that. You had a question back there. Yes, sir. Right, they have to. Right. Correct. And as a matter of fact, we'll get into a lot of that when we get into Leviticus 15, 16, 17, 18. It's specifically how they have to dress, how they have to act when they go out into town and stuff like that. So you'll see a lot of that coming up in Leviticus. Good thought. Good thought. All right, I lost my place. Where am I? 11. And you are to teach. Let me finish 10. You are to distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. Okay. 11. And you are to teach the people of Israel all the statutes that the Lord has spoken to them by Moses. So now God's telling Aaron to tell the people the same thing Moses has already told them. Then 12 says, Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, his surviving sons, right? That's the other two, because Nadab and Abihu just got torched, right? It says, take the grain offering that is left of the Lord's food offerings and eat it unleavened beside the altar, for it is most holy. You shall eat it in a holy place, because it is your due and your son's due from the Lord's food offerings. For so I am commanded. But the breast that is waved and the thigh that is contributed you shall eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you. For they are given as your due and your sons' due from the sacrifices of the peace offerings of the people of Israel. Remember, over the last few chapters, it's been telling us how they have to do the different types of offerings, right? Guilt offering, sin offering, right? And you have to put your hand on the head of the bull, or you have to put your hand on the sheep, right? It has to be slaughtered, and the blood has to be put on the altars, and then it has to be burned, and its entrails have to be taken outside of the city. So all of this stuff, and then the priests get to eat part of it. But then there's specific pieces they have to either do the wave offering or what's the word? Anyway, so it's the up. I almost said upheaval, and it's not it. Let's just call it a heave. Heave or a wave. So here's what I was thinking about when I was going over the notes for tonight, right? So you have the wave offering, that's paint the house, and you have the heave offering, which is paint the fence. I don't know why that's what came across my mind today. So I thought, well, I got to Exactly, right? So, yeah, Father Abraham. Anyway, so so Moses spoke to Aaron about, and that Eleazar, take the grain, did that one. 13, you shall eat it in a holy place, did that one, right? And then here, 14, it said, but the breast that is waved and the thigh that is contributed, you shall eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters, for they are given as your due and your sons' due for the sacrifices of the peace offerings for the people of Israel. Here we go. Ready? Here comes the questions. I just lost my place that quick. 15, the thigh that is contributed and the breast that is waved, they shall bring with the food offerings of the fat pieces to the wave for a wave offering before the Lord, and it shall be yours and your sons with you as a due forever, as the Lord has commanded. So all of these offerings had to take place for the sin atonement of the people of Israel. And because of that, the priest had to eat what was brought as the wave offering and the contribution, right? Okay. So this big fat piece of meat, you have to eat right then and right there. No utensils, no nothing, right? So it's got to be a mess, right? It's got to be a mess. It's got to be a mess. So I'm not going to ask that question. 16, now Moses diligently inquired about the goat of the sin offering, and behold, it was burned up. Was it supposed to be burned up? No. It was supposed to be eaten, right? I know that it's not possible for us to remember all those rules, but this was their job. Look what it says. And behold, it was burned up, and he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, the surviving sons of Aaron, saying, why have you not eaten the sin offering in the place of the sanctuary, since it is a thing most holy and has been given to you that you make atonement for them before the Lord? Oh, I skipped a line. Given to you that you may bear the iniquity of the congregation, the people of Israel, to make atonement for them before the Lord. Understand that it is the priest's responsibility to be that propitiation through that offering to God for the people. If they mess up, the people can't be forgiven. And they just messed up because they didn't eat it. Why? Exactly. Now, I'm not going to try to get too personal with you, but let's just say that you have two brothers, that you just watched a fire consume them. You want to eat something that was in the same place that they were? Probably not going to have a big appetite. Doesn't matter, you have to eat it. Probably didn't want to eat something that was consumed by a fire because you just watched your two brothers get consumed by fire. Right? So you can imagine what they were feeling. There you go. Yes, sir. And that's another point. And they could be angry at God at this moment, right? We don't know. It doesn't say. Even today. As a matter of fact, I was conversing with someone, consoling them, that said that they were still mad at God before their parents' sudden passing. So it's a common thing, right? But watch this next verse, right? So Moses is yelling at them, right? Because they didn't eat it. What am I, 16, 18? Behold, its blood was not brought into the inner part of the sanctuary. You certainly ought to have eaten it in the sanctuary, the outer part of the tabernacle, as I commanded. And then watch this, 19. And Aaron said to Moses, now, put yourself in that place. You're the parent. Two of your kids just died because they did something stupid, or James isn't here, but boneheaded, right? Aaron said to Moses, behold, today they have offered their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, and yet such things as these have happened to me. He's referring to the loss of his two children. Even when our children mess up, we still love them. We still want the best from them. We don't want them burned in a fire. sometimes hauled off to jail is not a bad thing, but you know what I'm saying. Just put that anywhere. So, says, if I had eaten the sin offering today, would the Lord have approved? Remember, he was upset, right? And he's like, if I did what I was supposed to do, would he have even accepted that offering? Let's go back to another time. Let's go back to the first two kids, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel because Abel took something that was pleasing to God, but Cain's scrapings of the ground, let's call him for that for effect, wasn't good enough. So God said, what have you done to your brother? He says, I don't know. I don't know your brother. Am I my brother's keeper? That's exactly right. So Cain couldn't bring a good offering. Now Aaron's like, could I bring a good offering? That's a good point. Still wrong, because he has the weight of the entirety of the congregation of Israel, or the people of Israel, upon him. Wow. Do you think you could handle that? I mean, it's easy for me. Absolutely not. I'd have torched that place by now. I just got to be honest, right? But I'm not in that position. Not, right? And when Moses heard that, mine says he approved. I can imagine that say he agreed. What? He was content. He agreed. He was okay with it. Yeah, you. Right? So everybody good with that, right? So that was several chapters of this is what the priest must do, didn't do, died, got yelled at for. Right? Now we go into chapter 11, and the whole book takes a different turn. That was all about what the priests had to do. Guess what 11 starts? What the people, I wanted to say we, but we're not Hebrews. I'd rather use the word, but you're right. That's right. We're not of the nation of Israel, right? At least I assume most of us are not. If you are, I apologize for making an assumption there. Chapter 11, though, says this. Watch this. Did you get it? All right. Verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Right, he's there too. Saying to them, speak to the people of Israel, saying, these are the living things that you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. All right, start running through your head. Name every animal. And go. No, okay, no, I'm just kidding. So then it says, speak to the people of Israel, right? Whatever parts of the hoof and is cloven-footed and chews the cud, among these animals you may eat. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, but if you look at a cow's foot, it has two big nails out in the front and a split in it, right? Okay. What does chewing the cud mean? Have you ever seen how a cow eats? They just pull grass and swallow and pull grass. They don't chew it. Later on, they bring it back up, chew on it, swallow it, go about their day, bring it back up, chew on it, until it gets to the part where it can go from the first stomach to the second, then from the second to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Okay? It's a process they go through. So what it says is anything with that cloven hoof, that split in the middle, that chews its cud, you can eat. Hamburgers for everybody. Or goat, sheep, right? But that's about where it's going to stop. Because watch what it says now. Verse 4, nevertheless, among those that chew the cud, spit it back up, rechew it, right? Or part of the hoof, you shall not eat these. The camel. Okay, I'm not a real fan of trying, barbecued camel. That's just not for me, right? Because it chews the cud, but does not part the hoof. It's different. It has a different look to the way its foot is, right? and is unclean to you. Now, a few minutes ago, I said you're going to hear that word quite a bit. This is the chapter where you really get torn into for clean and unclean. Are you ready? All right. So how many have ever tried? I'm just asking. How many of you ever tried camel? Yeah, I didn't think so. All right, but that's not where it's going to stop. Look what it says next. And the rock badger. King James calls it something else. What? Yeah, I can't even say that word. Safan. What? It's anyway. Imagine, if you will, a little ferocious badger. That's kind of like what they are. Okay, little badger. As a matter of fact, mine says rock badger. Because it chews the cud, so it'll eat something and then spit it back up and chew it again, right? But does not part the hoof and is unclean to you. Okay? Then mine says, and the hair. What is the hair? Right. And the rabbit, because it chews the cud but does not have part of the hoof, which means it has claws. Yeah, it did little bunny feet, right? How many of y'all carried a little bunny foot for a while, right? I know I did as a kid. See? Yeah. Well, the jackalope might. Yeah. All right, so it's unclean to you, so they couldn't have rabbit stew. No Hassenpfeffer for them, right? For those of you that grew up in my age, you know what Hassenpfeffer is because it was on the cartoons on Saturday morning. 7, and the pig. Uh-oh. Now, that just lost me right there. No more smoke butt. Just saying, that's what Tim keeps offering us when we come up there, right? So, and because the pig it parts of the hoof and is cloven-footed, but does not chew the cud, right? It just consumes stuff. It just eats it, swallows it, it's done with it. It's unclean to you. You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall not touch their dead bodies, their carcasses, for they are unclean to you. I don't care if it's laying in your bed, you can't touch it. Okay? I mean, there's a, Kimberly, there's a box of Kleenex under these Bibles. Oh, you got some right there? Hand them up here to me. There you go, Mama. I heard you cough. I thought you might need them. All right, so then verse 9. These you may eat. All right, you ready? So here comes the menu for the next time we have a pate. All right, here we go. So you may eat of all that are in the waters, everything in the waters that has fins and scales, whether it's in the seas or in the rivers, you may eat. Think, what is in the rivers and the oceans with fins and scales? Be careful. I'm glad I have people like that. Make me laugh. So your first response was a 4-letter F word. Fish. Careful. The word fish covers way too much. Watch. But anything in the seas or the rivers that does not have fins and scales, of the swarming creatures in the waters, of the living creatures that are in the waters, is detestable to you. Yes, eels is one of the first things I was going to bring up. What? Dolphins, sharks, whales, catfish. Catfish do not have scales. They have skin. You can't eat. Oh, wait. Trout. Can't have salmon. It's just one of those. But I'm going to go further than that. Let's read on. Watch what it says. You shall regard them as detestable, and you shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall detest their carcasses. Everything in the waters that does not have fins and scales is detestable to you. How many love shrimp? Can't have shrimp. Can't have lobster. Can't have crab. I'll argue that you are correct. No gator. No, that's skin. No scales. See, we don't think about stuff like that because we are not bound by this. And I meant to put that verse in there, but I forgot to. I'll get it next week. It says, and these ye shall detest among the birds. Uh-oh. What birds do you eat? Yard bird, yeah, right? Chicken, turkey, pigeon, goose. Why? What? She's out there yelling duck. What? Quail is another one. You just bought quail eggs the other day, so. And they're gone, of course, right? So you get it. There's a whole lot of things. But wait, it says of the birds, right? You shall not eat. They are detestable, which is the eagle. Don't think I'd ever try to eat an eagle. The bearded vulture. No, probably not. The black vulture, the kite. That's that little bird that's a fisher, right? The falcon of any kind. Every raven of any kind, right? That could be crow or whatever, right? The ostrich. I've had ostrich before. I had ostrich jerky. I don't remember what it tasted like. No, you can't have that either. No, because it's of that beast, right? So the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, the hawk of any kind, right? So we're going to go right on through that one, right? And then it says the little owl, or the to help me with this word, cormorant. What in the world is a cormorant? It's a big bird, bigger than a stork, almost as big as a dodo. It's got a big beak and it's huge, massive-looking fish eater. Okay? Wait, it gets better. The short-eared owl, if it's a long-eared owl, I guess it's okay. Well, I don't know. No. The barn owl, the tawny owl, the carrion vultures. Now we're back to vultures again, right? And then this it says the stork, the heron of any kind, and what's the next word? Okay, hoopy are Indians. That's not what it says. It's hopo. Yeah, hopo. Now let me explain what a hopo is, because I had to go look it up. It's a fisher. It stands about this tall, okay, very slender, and it has these spikes out of its head. So it's got all these things hanging around like this, right, that they use as fishing lures. Yes. They're all over Eastern Africa, Asia, even up into England. Yeah, I had never seen one either, but they float them out there over the water. The fish will see them. As the fish go to get that, they take the fish. Once again, you know, if you look at the fish of the deep sea, that one that's got the lantern that hangs out in front of it, that attracts all the other fish, and he sucks them in. You can't say that was happenstance. You can't. That's a God design right there. Right? Can't eat dinosaurs, right? So that's the hopo. And if we had just paid attention to this last sentence, a bunch of us wouldn't have been sick, right? What does it say? What's the last words? And the bat. You can't say it out. They can't say it out loud. No soup for you. Anyway, so all winged insects. I can go for that, right? I don't want to eat insects, okay? But I got a question to ask you about that in a minute. That go on all fours are detestable to you. Yet, among the winged insects that go on all fours, you may eat those that have jointed legs above their feet with which to hop on the ground. As a matter of fact, it says, of them you may eat the locust of any kind, the bald locust of any kind, the cricket of any kind, the grasshopper of any kind. But all other winged insects that have 4 feet are detestable to you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. There was a person that came before Jesus, and his job was to tell the world of the coming of the kingdom of God. What was his name? John the Baptizer. What did he eat? Locust and wild honey. He's following the rules because those rules still were in effect when John was baptizing people. Okay? Those laws had still been in effect. Now, I know a lot of people have eaten chocolate-covered grasshoppers and stuff just to try them, right? And a lot of us bikers, I'm looking over there as if Pop was there, that have ridden for many, many years have consumed other insects, not intentionally. Yeah, we would be unclean because of the things that hit you in the face. I'm because beetles, roaches, flies. I love the way you said that, flies, right? Bees. These are all things, and that bees, now you come back to the honeycomb. Honeycomb is larvae of the bees, right? Some people eat the honeycomb. I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels, right? It's the texture to me. You really have to think about the broad spectrum of things it talks about that we don't think about because we don't live under these rules. We don't. Let's continue on. And by these you shall become unclean. Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until the evening. So, yeah. You go to grab a sweater out of the closet, and a few things fall off of it that have been in the closet forever and ever. Moths, roaches. Sorry if you ever have to deal with that. Well, that's unclean, and now you're unclean because you moved it. And whoever carries any part of their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Every animal that parts the hoof but is not cloven-footed or does not chew the cud is unclean to you. Everyone who touches them shall be unclean. And all that walk on their paws among the animals that go on all fours are unclean to you. I'll get to yours first. In just a second. What did you just say? So they can't eat from the Chinese restaurant or for Korean? But it's not chicken or beef or pork that's on my fork. That's Garfield on my pork. Correct. Yes, sir. It's unclean until the evening, which means they can't touch their parents, or the parents will become unclean. They can't touch a priest. That would make him unclean, which means they couldn't go through with any rituals or anything. Yeah. Yep. Until 6 p.m. What's that? Good question. So the question was, what if you didn't know that your child had touched something unclean? Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. And I'd have to say, by the rules and laws that I've seen, it would not affect you. Like if you eat something that has been offered to other gods, you are released from that. Well, yeah. So I would have to go with that. I'm not a scholar of that, but my understanding would be it really doesn't matter because we're not held to that anyway, right? That's absolutely true. In this case, now ignorance of the law, your child doing drugs, yeah, that's different. Right? All right. I have no idea where I'm at. 27. Oh, okay. You can find 27. All that walk on the paws. Oh, yeah. Okay. So all that walk on paws on animals that go on all fours are unclean to you. Whoever touches them shall be unclean until evening. All right. And he who carries their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you among the swarming things that swarm on the ground, such as the mole rat, the mouse, the great lizard of any kind, the gecko, the monitor lizard, sand lizard, and the chameleon. Okay, let's go back to the swarming thing for a minute. We live in the southeast. In the summertime, how many times have you turned a corner and walked face first into a swarm of gnats? You're unclean. Yeah, I am, because I probably just threw up all over myself. I hate that. I hate walking into a swarm of gnats. I hate it. It gets to me. That's the chameleon last, right? 31. These are unclean to you among all that swarm. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until the evening. And anything on which any of them falls when they are dead shall be unclean. Whether it is an article of wood or a garment or a skin or a sack or any article that is used for any purpose, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. So back to the swarming things, right? So ants would be included in this. How many times have we seen ants crawling all over our blankets and stuff at picnics or wherever, right? Even in the house. They're everywhere. That makes the whole thing unclean. Okay? But here's some caveats to that. Watch what it says here. Put it in water, right? It says 33, and if any of them falls into any earthenware vessel, all that is in it shall be unclean, and ye shall break it. No, we just empty it out, wash it, and put something else in it, right? Any food in it that could be eaten on which water comes shall be unclean. And all drink that could be drunk from every such vessel shall be unclean. And everything on which any part of their carcasses falls shall be unclean. Whether oven or stove, it shall be broken into pieces. Sir, that's going to be more business for you. They can't just clean it. They got to break it, and they need new ones, right? So they are unclean and shall remain unclean for you. Nevertheless, a spring or a cistern holding water shall be clean, but whoever touches the carcass in it from them shall be unclean. And if any part of their carcass fall upon any seed grain that is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on that seed, or any part of the carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. Okay, do you realize how many laws we just went through? And we're not done. We're not done. And if any animal which you may eat dies, whoever touches it shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever eats of the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. And whoever carries the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. So you have 99 sheep because one ran away. Well, that one dies. You got to carry it off so that it doesn't attract varmints. You're unclean now until the evening. Yes, sir. If the animal had died before it was cooked, slaughter and died from being attacked by, right. So 41. Ooh, coming to the end. Every swarming thing that swarms on the ground. I swarm it? It sounds like they're trying to cuss at you. It says every swarming thing that swarms on the ground is detestable. Ants is the one I think of this. It shall not be eaten. Okay, good with that. Whatever goes into its belly, onto its belly, and whatever goes on all fours, and whatever has many feet, any swarming thing that swarms on the ground, you shall not eat, for they are detestable. Stop. Things that go on the ground on their bellies would include snakes and I don't like spiders and snakes. That's not fun. Anyway, so anything that swarms on the ground, you shall not make yourselves detestable with any swarming things that swarms, and you shall not defile yourselves with them and become unclean through them. For I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves, set yourself apart, make yourself holy, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourself with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground. For I am the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I can put you back there. I always want to add that part to it, right? I brought you up out of Egypt. I'll take you back there. Anyway, so you shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law about beast and bird and every living creature that moves through the waters and every creature that swarms on the ground, to make a distinction between the unclean, there's that word again, and the clean, and between the living creature and that may be eaten and the living creature that may not be eaten. And here's the argument that everybody wants to make. This is about health. Because everybody knows you eat pork, you're going to get fat and die. I mean, that's what they've been telling us for years, right? It's not what it's about. Right? It's not about health. That's the word I was looking for. It's about obedience. Thou shalt not eat of the tree. And what do? We ate of the tree. Thou shalt not eat pork. Now, years later, a man on a roof falls asleep. He has a dream. The dream is of all living creatures on a sheet being lowered by the four corners of the earth. And the voice says, arise and eat. And the man says, I can't, for it is unclean. And the response comes back, there's a barbecue stand down on the corner across from a taco stand. You can eat anything God has made. Now, the taco stand is made up, but the barbecue part's okay. Right? We don't live under these rules anymore. However, there's a lot of people out there that will say, you eat pork, you are unclean, you're ungodly. That is not true. There are people that will tell you not to eat pork because it's unhealthy. Okay, because of heart disease and things like that. I'm not going to disagree. However, I don't live under those rules. I don't. You don't. You may choose not to eat them, and that's fine. But I warn you, do not inflict your opinions on others, because God said, whatever I've made is holy. Clean. Is that a question back there, buddy? When we get into, like I say, Leviticus 11 through 15 is all about clean and unclean, what our responsibilities are. Women, sorry, I'm just going to say it, right? If it's that time of month, you are unclean. Until the flow stops, that evening you become clean again. But you have to do the ritualistic. They had to do the ritual. Say that word right there, ritualistic water cleansing. They couldn't even sit on a stool. They had to stand the whole time. I've never experienced that. I will never experience that. But can you imagine for the time that you have that, you couldn't sit down? Not in your bed. On the ground somewhere that is unclean. And no one could sit there or lay there after you, or they would be unclean. They can't touch anything that you've touched because they would be unclean. Like I say, that's what we're going to get into over the next 4 chapters. Can you imagine something you knew? Mhm. Wow, I've never experienced that. That's no. I was just gonna say that's what they dealt with. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Food that went to somebody else. Right. Right. So I worked with a man that was of the Jewish faith, right? And we had company functions that served pork. I mean, that's whatever, right? So I said, "Pardon me, I'm trying to learn. What do you do in this case where all they have to offer would, in your terms, be unclean?" He said, "We do the best we can." Can you imagine being so tied down to specific rules that you couldn't eat lunch with your wife, that you couldn't be with your company at a festival or meeting of any kind, and that you could never have tacos again? I'm sorry I got stuck on the tacos, but that's, a good, huh? Well, beef tacos, but I'm talking about el pastor, right? You gotta have the carnitas, man. You gotta have the pork. Okay, have I made y'all hungry enough now? You got 15 minutes to wait and you're done. There you go. There you go. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am. That's fine. They are. They are. Their mind is still stuck on the Messiah has not come, because the Messiah, our Christ, came to deliver us from our sins. They're still waiting on somebody to come and do away with the Roman rule or world rule or whatever now, right? They don't think Jesus was the real. Mhm. Okay. There's also a small slice of what's called the Messianic Jews. Those are people of the Jewish faith that believe in Christ, but they can't let go of the law. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are really confused. Yeah, there, like I say, there's a lot of people out there, especially those that will use that as a medical thing. It's unclean. It will make you sick. It doesn't. I mean, heart disease and stuff, sure, but you can't blame it just on pork. You can't. Yes, sir. So I had to. I'm gonna separate that question into two parts. My brother said, if you're around someone who doesn't eat like you do, to keep them from stumbling, because that's the verse we looked up today, because somebody brought cookies that we shouldn't have. Anyway, so the first part of it is, should we eat that in front of them? Well, I take it as this. I'm eating what I'm eating. You eat what you eat. I'm not going to force you to eat what I have. Okay? Now, if they say, and the Bible does talk about this, it bothers me for you to eat that in front of me, then what you're supposed to do is go somewhere else out of respect. Does that answer your question? Now, are you going to tell me that I can't eat pork? Don't get between a fat man and his food, brother. I'm just warning you right now. Anything else? Isn't this fun? But if you just sit at home and read it, it's not that much fun. Right? All right, listen, folks. We're going to go ahead and turn off the cameras, and we're going to do our personal and private prayer requests. Don't forget, Sunday morning, if you're able to, come and join us. January 1st, start of a new year, 2023. Band's going to play. The singers are going to sing. And we start a new chapter, a new book, a new series. And yes, ma'am. Good to see you again. You're fine. You're fine. Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good to see you again, Miss Angela. But Book of Acts, we start Sunday. You better learn how to act. And I don't mean ask questions.